Hey, everybody, and welcome to the presentation on energy and chakras. This is the first topic I need to give you a trigger warning because we are going to touch a bit in this presentation on childhood trauma. The first thing, as always, is let's agree to our terminology. We're going to define the word chakra. Chakras are points within the human body that allow the transfer of energy. Think of them as your personal highway system from the top of your head down to your feet, and the energy will flow up and down and through your limbs. There are 7 chakras of the physical body shown here, and 5 additional spiritual chakras that sit outside of the body but within your energy field. Your hands and feet also carry their own version of the 7 physical chakras, which is why Reiki, that is energy healing through the hands, or stepping outside barefoot in the grass to ground yourself can be so powerful. Energy can easily and regularly get blocked, which requires focused meditation to open the flow of energy again. And this most certainly affects your overall health and wellness. This is probably the first topic where we're going to go a little bit deeper into the woo-woo side of science, and I want you to bear with me, okay? Chakras are something that will become a regular language for you soon enough. We're going to cover 3 things today. We're going to talk about trapped emotion and its effect on the body. And then we're going to pivot back over to chakra science. And finally, we'll talk about the importance of upkeep and consistency to keep your energy flowing freely and all that stress out of your body. Let's start with trapped emotion. No matter how great you think you are at expressing yourself, you will still harbor trapped emotion in the body, and it will have an effect on you. The fact of the matter is, we're just sort of unaware throughout the day how it latches onto us. We're unaware how we take on emotion within our body, and that can really hurt us. This ignorance keeps us trapped in a sense of self that is completely surrounded around our mind and how smart we are, and our body and how much we exercise. But there's a whole other aspect to our existence. Science has shown, as we've talked about ad nauseum so far, that the mind has the effect on the body and the body has the effect on the mind. Emotional tension, for example, will create physical tension in the body. You'll feel that in your neck and shoulders. You might feel it in your jaw. And here's a few more examples. If you get embarrassed, you might blush. If you're happy, you might smile. These are things the body does as a reaction to an emotion you're feeling, and you don't even know what's happening. The fact of the matter is, accumulation of this trapped up energy kills. Prolonged stress can build up in the body. It builds up, and it might be first noticeable, as I mentioned, in our muscles, but it takes its biggest toll on your nervous system. Emotions leave charges in the body, and these charges build and build and build. And then finally, it will trigger your fight or flight symptoms. Eventually, we might explode, figuratively, of course. But research strongly links, for example, anger with coronary heart disease. Let's think about that for a minute. Have you ever been at a ball game or a restaurant and you've seen someone get really upset and you sort of think to yourself, oh man, they're going to have a heart attack? That's not a coincidence, and that's not a joke. There's actual science behind hostility and heart problems. Now, if we want to talk a little bit about people that you may recognize as being kind of generally angry or cranky or hostile, hostility is generally thought of as expressed contempt or having an aggressive attitude, but it's actually composed of 3 parts. It's cognitive, affective, and behavioral as well. The cognitive or mental part of hostility is when the person has negative beliefs about something or they have a kind of a negative attitude. Hostile people tend to be mistrusting of others or maybe even a little paranoid. Now, the affective part can be a little bit more broad, and it ranges from mildly annoyed all the way up to rage. Now, if you're thinking about somebody in your mind who may be kind of curmudgeon-y like this, now think about the physical aspects that they tend to deal with as well. And you can see that as we dig into some of our own shadow work, we're going to be thinking about sort of how we show up to life and how that also affects our body. We've learned that hostility in people tends to begin in childhood. It can be learned from your parents or the bullying of a sibling, or maybe just some like basic resentment because you had to fend for yourself. Adverse childhood experiences have been studied more and more, and researchers assign an ACE score when they do this research. This will indicate the number of different categories that a child may experience within that ACE paradigm. So the higher the score, the more likely they will suffer from a chronic or mental physical condition in adulthood. More than 2/3 of the US population has experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. A whopping 25% of us have experienced 3 or more. Now think about how all that is carried into adulthood. This can result in something called toxic stress, which is an excessive activation of that stress response system. Thinking back to sort of that angry person we just mentioned, could it just be that they're living in that excessive activated state? Being in that constant state can lead to depression, anxiety. Take a look at this list. Hypersensitivity and hypervigilance are also a result of how living at that stress level can manifest itself. So you go into adulthood hypersensitive and hypervigilant, which can kind of create this trigger system in you where you either hide or react based on the changes that are happening in your stress hormones. Now, some recent research suggests that an increased risk of depression might be related to changes that occurred on account of the trauma itself, like small chemical changes to genes that affect the way you function. So let's dig deeper. Researchers at Yale University and the Child Mind Institute in New York identified changes in a group of 94 children who had suffered a trauma. Now, in this study, they compared the 94 children who suffered a trauma to the 96 who did not. What they found is that at the cellular level, there were genetic changes in the children that would have triggered depression later on in life based on the trauma that they experienced. Now, health services around the world are spending and making billions of dollars on antidepressant drugs, but for a great number of people, these are like treating painful events that took place years and decades earlier. They're just not getting the job done. So how do we release trauma and suppressed emotion? How do we heal from this? Well, I already mentioned drugs often don't work in terms of healing trauma the way people really need it to. It really just kind of covers up the symptoms like a mask. And that's okay. We need antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications in many cases, but they, like I said, are going to treat the symptoms, not the cause. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score, and it explains in the book why antidepressants tend to be less effective in people with a history of trauma, especially a history of sexual abuse as children. So how do we release the trauma if we can't medicate it away? And we shouldn't medicate it away. We're going to cover 2 healthy things you can do. 1, write about it. You can release trauma and suppressed emotion simply by writing about it. And this is why you'll see shadow work and journaling be such a great method across different therapies. The University of Texas studied both students and volunteers who showed results even 6 weeks later after the exercise had been done. They experienced greater T cell activity. They had lower blood pressure. They had elevations in their immune markers. In addition, the people in the participation group that had sexual trauma as children reported a 50% reduction in hospital and doctor visits in the year that followed. So what they're doing by writing about it, by talking about it, they're releasing from their bodies the trapped emotion they probably didn't even realize they were still carrying. So let's talk about what it is to become aware. All of this work requires a certain level of awareness. And when you do these activities, you're basically spelling it out to yourself how you really felt about something. You are an energy being. You have emotion. Emotion causes physical changes to the body and vice versa. So from a neuroscience perspective, when you increase self-awareness by doing an exercise like writing or speaking about your trauma, you're actually making new connections in the brain. You are connecting the frontal regions of the brain that are associated with higher brain function like concentration, decision-making, experiencing positive emotions. You're linking that part of the brain with the amygdala in the back, which processes fear and anxiety. And it's involved in the processing of most of our emotional pain. So when you're able to link and form connections between these two parts of the brain through writing and talking about your trauma and your emotions, not only are you releasing those emotions, but you're creating new networks so that as new emotions occur, your brain is able to process them much better and you show up to life stronger and more healthy. I'd like to read this quote to you by Caroline Shola Ariwa, and if you click on that link, you'll end up at her site as well. Disease is often an accumulation of dammed up energy. When we learn how energy moves through our bodies, through the chakras, we can begin to allow it to flow freely through our bodies, creating greater health. And now we're going to link all of this back to chakra science. So we talked about blockages in the body based on emotions and pent up trauma. We talked about a couple practical ways to release it, like writing and speaking about it. There also are a lot of other methods we can do, and that ties into meditation or EFT tapping, which I'll teach you later. Going back to what the chakras are and what they do. As a reminder, chakras are the psychic centers of energy in your body. They're not physical locations that can be x-rayed or palpated, but they do correlate to major nerve plexuses within the body. And that's how, when they are blocked, or when your energy is pent up, or you have these emotions built up, it actually causes physical reactions. So balancing them is going to be part of our overall health and wellness recipe. Now you can see on the side here, there's often a color associated with each chakra. There's also a mantra chant that you can use. You'll see Om or Yam. There is a gland which has specific hormones tied to it. And then also like the essence of it, whether it's intuition, communication, or love. And it should be no surprise where it shows up in your body is probably also indicative of where these things may happen. So my heart chakra being blocked means that I may have some problems with love. Here's a chart that will help you understand how an imbalance may look and the symptoms that may come out of it. For example, if you have a blockage of energy in your crown chakra, and that just means the energy isn't able to flow through it, right? It's just blocked right now. You could be experiencing closed-mindedness. You could feel disconnected. And that can result in negative thinking or depression, the inability to learn, or apathy. With the third eye, you may be feeling a lack of direction or clarity, or may have a hard time trusting people. And that can come out as memory loss, lack of goals, maybe some nightmares. So take a look at this chart when you have some time, and you can refer back to it anytime you're kind of experiencing a symptom and you want to maybe understand how to meditate on it. Here's the second part of the chart as it goes through the heart, solar plexus, sacral, and root. For me personally, the solar plexus tends to be blocked the most. Even though I like to exude confidence in my daily life, inside I am pretty insecure about my decisions or things I say or do. And that's an imbalance that I have. And so symptoms that may occur with this include digestion issues, chronic fatigue, or feelings of inadequacy. We spent a lot of time in the first part of this presentation talking about the physical body. The subtle body is connected to the physical body. Now, physically, we have 5 senses, right? We can hear, see, taste, smell, touch. The subtle body is an energetic stamp or template of the physical body. It's mirroring the form, but it's more in the subtle realm. Now, how are they connected? Our bodies are wrapped in fascia, a tightly wound bundle of muscle fibers that make up one of the layers of our subtle body. And so when we experience trauma in the body, we oftentimes feel it as like muscle blocks and tightness. So let's talk about subtle energy. Subtle energy is described as electromagnetic wavelengths, rates of vibration, patterns of pulsation, the dynamic infrastructure of the body. Each person has unique patterns of energy that are directly related to their health and well-being. Recent scientific investigations confirm the existence of a subtle energy field around all living organisms, similar to the energy field recorded using thermal imaging technology. This energy consists of natural neuroelectrical frequencies that the body produces or absorbs to facilitate optimum health and cell function. Now, subtle energies regulate optimum cell function. Consequently, a lack of this energy correlates to an energy and healing crisis for the body. If a lack or imbalance of this energy is experienced, cell dysfunction occurs, resulting in suboptimal health. Now, I have a link here at the bottom. You can start to work in your own subtle body energy with this meditation practice. Now let's talk about upkeep and consistency. I want to draw your attention to this quote by Dr. Gabor Mate. And his link is hyperlinked. His name is hyperlinked there to the trailer of a video I'd like you to watch based on his documentary. He says, trauma is not the bad things that happen to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. I want you to think of your body, mind, spirit as a garden. And the garden needs to be nurtured and tended to. Now, some of the flowers in your garden need more water than others. Some need more sunlight than others, right? Some of them will die with too much sunlight and they need to be shaded. Just like your body, mind, and spirit, all of your energy systems, emotional systems, mental, physical systems, they all require something different. Most of the time we go through life tending to our physical needs. We need to drink a lot of water. We need to get exercise. We need to get some sleep. Those are all really important things, and we need to keep doing those things for our garden. But we also need to address the flow of our energy and the blockages that we may incur. We need to address our trapped emotion and how what happened to us as children carries through to who we are today and how we show up to life. We need to do these things one thing at a time, one relationship at a time, one body ailment, one tendency at a time. It's so important for us to keep tending to this garden. Now, as always, we're going to reflect and apply. There'll be a little bit of worksheet or journal work that will need to be done. I'd like you to do a couple meditations on this. And just like in the last presentation, we're going to start integrating what we're learning into our daily life. And so your number one task moving forward is to become aware every day of how different pieces of emotion are getting stored up in your body. And then what we're going to do is put together a plan in this program that will help you address and release or clear some of these latent energies as needed, so they don't show up as something else later, like a headache or depression or fibromyalgia. Okay. Thank you so much for joining this presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.